All right, today I want to talk about processing. Processing.org is a website that is a development of a language that goes by the name processing, and it is a language that is used for creating data visualization, or you can draw basic shapes and images. You can do animation with it. You can do three-dimensional elements. You can do lots and lots of things with it. One of the things I want you to see is that it's something that you can download yourself. It's open source. It's free. You can go to the downloading site and you can simply download it. Another thing that's nice is that on the website it has tutorials that you can go to and get started from. And I'm going to basically start a very simple demonstration here of writing and drawing an image or drawing pictures on the screen with processing. The same kind of things that are described here in these basic processing tutorials. When you download processing, you're going to get a folder that contains the file to start and run processing. You're going to get this user screen, this UI here, where you can actually write your code, and this is where we'll do all of our writing of the code. So we'll write it in here like a text editor, and then we'll use this button to run the code. And if it is written properly, we don't make any errors in our code writing, it will create an image for us based on what we input. This is based off of a Java language, but you can also use JavaScript too. I'm currently just going to be using the Java, but in the end, processing is kind of like a step kind of above Java. It makes it a little bit easier, but overall it ends up being Java, and then it can be JavaScript in the end, and you can use that in web-based applications if you prefer. Now, the first thing that I've done is I've entered in a comment, and one of the things that you want to notice is that when you code a comment, you have to start it with a / and an asterisk, and end it with an asterisk and a /. So anything contained inside of it will be grayed out and basically ignored by the computer. If I was to type in information here, notice how it's black, and the computer would try to understand what that is supposed to be. It's expecting a command and it doesn't know what that is. So down here in this area, we get feedback from the computer telling us that there might be a problem. Now, when you begin working in processing, it starts off with some very simple things. We're going to basically write code, meaning I'm going to write a bunch of separate commands that tell the computer to do certain things. Sometimes commands can be made that you need certain information to make something happen. So if I was going to draw a square on the screen, I need to know, first of all, where's that square going to be located in space. And when you have a canvas, think if this represented a canvas, the coordinate system would be the upper left-hand corner would be 0, 0, 0. So where the edges meet, 0, 0, 0, then every single pixel is going to have a number across the screen. However wide the screen is, there's going to be a X value and a Y value. So 0, 0, 0 is 0 pixels in X and 0 pixels in Y. And depending on how big the screen is, I could have 250 pixels here and then go down to 250 pixels in Y. So just like with a piece of graph paper, you can go over an X, down in Y, and that's where you can place an object. And so before we start drawing anything, we want to make sure that we set up a canvas. And the canvas is the space in which we'll be placing objects. Now, before I do anything, I could hit this run button, and processing will just open up a little canvas and a little canvas here. This canvas is actually 100 pixels wide and 100 pixels tall. So this corner right here would be 0, 0, 0, and halfway would be 50 pixels, and halfway down would be 50 pixels. So if I was right in the middle of this, it would be 50 pixels in X, 50 pixels in Y. So for instance, if I wanted to create something, I'm going to write the key term that I want. So for instance, I'm going to create an ellipse or a circle. And that circle is got to be, it takes, in order for us to create it, we have to enter in first a keyword. So I'm going to use a keyword ellipse. The ellipse is one of the core shapes that we can use. So if we were to go to processing and we were to go over to references and we were to look at 2D primitive shapes, ellipse is right here. And the ellipse has a specific format. And it tells us that when we write ellipse, it takes 4 arguments, A, B, C, and D. And they're contained within these parentheses. And the parentheses, or that entire command, it ends with a semicolon. So the actual code itself is going to look like this. You're going to have the keyword here, ellipse. You're going to have the parentheses, beginning and end. And inside that, depending on the kind of object you're making, it's going to take what's called parameters or arguments. And these numbers are going to be used in a program somewhere we don't actually see, but this is going to be used for the X value, the Y value, so it's going to find those places. And this is going to be used for its width value and its height value. So let's copy this, Control copy, and I'm going to actually just paste it right here. And if I don't do anything else, and if I run this, it will place the ellipse in that position. So in 56 here, 56 pixels in X, and 46 pixels in Y. So it's almost halfway if this is 100. Now if I wanted to change the size of my object, or this, I could simply change this value. So let's say I change it to 75. Now if I make this unequal, then it will make a wider and narrow ellipse. If I make it a lot wider, if I make it, let's say 90, almost the entire length of my canvas, it's going to stretch over, and because it's off center just a little bit, I'll put it right in the middle. And we go right here. Now, if I wanted to make my canvas bigger, I could say size, because it's a keyword. Then I need to say how big I want it to be, and that information has to be inside my parentheses. Then I need to end that command with a semicolon. So in here I can put my X and Y values, and I'm going to say 500 pixels wide, comma, by 500 pixels tall. And I'm going to run that, and you'll see that now my canvas has gotten bigger. Okay? And so what I'm going to be doing here is just kind of working with placing objects in my scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this 55, and I'm going to draw this one. So here it is. And I'm going to draw another one. So I could simply take this and copy it. Okay? And if I do, they're in the exact same place. But what I want to do is move one over. So I can move this over about, if I move it over 55, I'm going to say 105. Okay? So I'm going to say, watch what happens. I put these two objects side by side, and notice that they're just barely touching. Now, it's drawing this one first, and then drawing this one. So if I actually nudge this over, or give this about, move this one over 45 and X, it'll overlap the other one, and you'll be able to see, I used the wrong value, that's its width. So this is what I want to change. So if I move that over an X, it'll overlap just slightly. Now, one important principle to understand is that when you're doing this in code, every time you draw something, you have to be very specific about what you want. So for instance, let's say I wanted to change the color of my ellipses. the inside color is called the fill color. So if I use the keyword fill, I can give a parameter of a value of 0 to 255. Now we're using 8-bit color, and so that means that we have 8 different combinations of either 0 or 1 to work with. And when you do that, that gives you 256 variations. 0 is black, 255 is white, and somewhere in the middle is gray. So if I was to shoot in the middle, say 175, and I ran this, I'm going to change the color of those ellipses to a dark gray. But what if I wanted to change only the first one and not the second one, or if I wanted to change them both differently? Well, I have to use this value before each time I draw it. So watch this. I'm going to change this value to something a lot lighter, so I'm just going to go 255, which will be white. So it's going to use this fill value, then draw this ellipse, then change the fill value and draw this ellipse. So I'm going to get 2 different colored ellipses here. So I've got my gray one, and then I've got this one, and they overlap very nicely. Okay? So the positions and the placement where I put these objects is very, very important, and it's based on the grid. So for instance, if I wanted to place a point or draw a point or a single pixel at the very center of my canvas, I can do this. My point value, the parameters are going to go inside my parentheses. I close it off. I do that just so that I don't forget. And I can use the value of my canvas, halfway of 250, 500 is 250, and halfway of the Y value is 250. Now if I said, if that's all I ever said, it's going to put a tiny, tiny, tiny little speck right there. You can't see it. So I want to enlarge it. So there are keywords and functions to enlarge things. And the one thing that makes the lines around objects, the stroke around objects, larger is called stroke weight. And it's one word, but I capitalize the second word because they're run together. Notice that it turned blue. And if I put a value in, say of 10, that's going to be 10 pixels wide. So now I have a 10 pixel wide point. Now watch what would happen if I put stroke weight up top in front of everything else. I cut it from here and I put it here. Because I specify it at the very beginning, everything is going to have that stroke weight of 10. Now what's interesting is I could change this to 3. I could go down here, make a copy, and change that to 10. And I get a stroke weight of 3. And so those kind of things are really, really, really important in what we're trying to do in this. So what you're going to be doing is we're going to continue to build on these ideas, and we're going to be putting points on the page, building a structure based off these principles. Now, when you create something like this, the proper format is to contain all of these commands within a larger function called a setup. And a setup is a function, and it starts out like this, called void, and we call it void because it's not going to return any value. It's not going to return a number or something like that. It's not going to figure something out like sales tax and give you a number. Then we say setup, then we have our parentheses, and then we have brackets at the beginning and at the end of the entire thing. So everything that happens in this is going to happen between these two brackets. And everything that happens in the void setup function is basically going to happen one time. It's like a still image. It will not be animated. We do have the ability to animate things. Nothing's going to look any different, but it is different in how we set things up. All right, in the next video, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about placing things within our canvas.